Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, powered by Braden. This is your front row seat to the stories of local leaders, both nonprofit and for-profit, who are shaping our community. Every episode brings you leadership insights, lessons for challenges, and practical strategies you can use today. And yes, we'll keep it real and have some fun along the way. If you're ready to elevate your leadership, hit subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn for updates and behind-the-scenes content. Now, let's dive in. Hey everybody, Jay Simone here with another episode of the Elevate Podcast, powered by Braden. And I'm excited to meet really with kind of a new friend. We've met over the last couple of months through another acquaintance at a Pacers game. But the story's cool, business is awesome, great local leader. So excited to talk to my friend Jill. So Jill, maybe a quick introduction?
Yeah, I am Jill Lehman, and I am the founder of Evolve HR Group. And what we do is really help small and mid-sized businesses evolve and scale their HR function. You're really passionate about it. It's a piece of my career, and I believe we get to talk about that.
We will. The absolute, your story, the evolution, the journey, what you talked about at the basketball game is really awesome.
I am from a small town in northern Indiana. If anyone out there's a Roanoke, Indiana. And great little downtown, lots of key restaurants. Yep. But I grew up in a farm there. So a farm girl from northern Indiana.
All right, northern Indiana, Roanoke. So kind of growing up and getting into high school, what were you doing during those days?
So a little bit of a book nerd because I knew I wanted to go to college and I knew I wanted to do something in business. I didn't know where I was or when animals, strangely, like they come too. So was I going to be a veterinarian? Was I going to work in business somewhere? I had this weird thought about working on the Chicago Board of Trade.
Okay.
And living in the big city, because I grew up a farm girl. Big cities were kind of intriguing, but I also love the animals. And spent a lot of time in 4-H and, just on the farm around the animals. So it was going to be in one of those two areas for sure.
Okay, so with growing up on a farm and it literally a farm, were they helping kind of guide some of those decisions? Where did that come from that you knew you wanted to go to school and to do something after high school? Where did that genesis come from, maybe to get into those fields?
It's interesting because when I've been asked this question before, I didn't think about growing up on a family farm as a business.
So that's interesting, to look back in your career now and to go back to kind of your start, to see your dad as a business owner. So modeling some of those things he was modeling, you don't do play football, but obviously got it planted into you. So you get into high school. What's high school? It's like, what are you doing during your high school days, activities, those types of things?
I'm definitely studious in high school. So because I know when you're at college, and it's going to be that first generation to go on a campus. Okay. I knew that was what I wanted to do. I also like sports, so softball and volleyball are sports that I like to play. And then I was a normal, probably teen at that time, cruising around the streets, listening to my favorite bands, going to concerts, probably typical from that standpoint. Worked in a veterinary office with my best friend. That was kind of fun to get to work in something you really enjoyed around the animals and with your best friend. So we drive after school together and get to work together. And that was kind of fun.
Okay.
Perspective.
That's awesome. For some of the folks out there that are going to be listening, the term cruise, they're not going to know what.
They're just going to know what that is.
I know what it is. It was fun. You got in your car, and you drove around, and you waved at people, and it was great. That's what we used to do outdoors for activities.
That was before the cell phones and the internet. That was our way to connect.
I'll never start to talk to folks unless you got a chance to see them. I used to love to cruise too. Mm-hmm. So we have that kind of. Okay, so going through school, you're working at the veterinary office for your best friend. You're going to make the decision to go on to the university or college. Where are you thinking about going and where did you end up?
Sure. I had dreams of going to the University of Wisconsin, Madison. I had gone there on schools and field trip. And the campus was beautiful in the summer, right? It was right there on the lake. It's this beautiful setting at one of the first campuses that I had been on, maybe out of the state of Indiana. And so that was my goal. And they had a vet program, and then it was Michigan State, and they had a pre-veterinary program. So that was my sure dream. So I applied to all the schools. It got accepted, and my dad looked at me and my mom and said, congratulations, you got in, pick an in-state school. So for me, who grew up with my dad kind of this rabid-eyeing basketball fan, it was like, well, that's Purdue.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I ended up at Purdue.
So you're at Purdue. You start. What are you studying, and what's it look like for you those 4 years at Purdue?
Yeah. So at Purdue, I started the pre-doc program. So it was science classes in those early years. And then I took a economics class and a sales and marketing class.
Okay.
And I found out I really enjoyed that. And I did enjoy the chemistry classes, the advanced biology classes. So I switched after my freshman year into economics. And because I had so many science credits, a minor in food science.
Okay.
So that's when I graduated. Okay, well, weird combination.
That is a little bit strange. So, but you're going down the path that entrepreneurial has. You decide maybe for the first time, you're kind of exposed to something different. You realize you like it, right? So are you consulting with people at this school? How does that, are you just realizing this at 19 and you're able to see, I can figure this out? Or are there folks you're talking to that are maybe guiding you, saying maybe this might be a better path? I'm always curious when you didn't make that decision, especially in school. Did it just click for you to say, this is the way I want to go? Or was there somebody helping along the way?
Boy, I don't know if I've really ever been asked that question before, but I definitely saw that interest when I hit those classes.
Great.
And I think one of the moments that I remember the most is in the sales and marketing class. We spent a day out in the field with a salesperson. My salesperson was from Frito-Lay, and we went out to his different stores. And he walked me through, and he did some merchandising that time. And I was like, this was kind of really interesting. It's really sure, and it pulls a lot of the things that I really am enjoying business. And I didn't share this with you. My grandfather on my mom's side, I immigrated into the U.S., owned a restaurant.
Okay.
He passed away before I was ever born, but I always felt connected to him as well as a small business owner and a restaurant owner and all wonderful stories that I had heard about him.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is really interesting. There's business in it. And, I've grown up in agriculture, so the food industry is kind of involved in this stuff. I see the opportunity of, that farm girl that wants to see the city world in those opportunities. And I think that's just where I started to gravitate to. Because, my mom was in healthcare, and she had always been trained to go down Bacaffa, and a nurse's a great job. Sure, hell, let's work anywhere as a nurse. And I've had a great career as a nurse. And so I think she was trying to guide me there. She didn't get my sister there. So my sister is a nurse today. And my dad, he was supportive of, going to school and getting an education, but his dream would have been for me in some form of fashion to come back on to the farm and have his family, or it's a very family-oriented environment. We sure live on a farm. So I was probably the little bit more where I wanted to be. I found something that really drove into the passions that I had and interests I have, but also honor where I grew up in and around. But I don't know if it was strategic back then. Yes, any form or fashion. But when I look back and I dissect it, I think that's how the journey starts.
And that's awesome. It's just interesting. Folks go through and they're going one direction, but then they put themselves in some experiences. And once they get an opportunity or a taste of something, wow, you really like this. Okay, so you make your change. You're now a sophomore going down the business track. So coming, through school and looking to what's going to be next coming out of Purdue, where's the journey take you?
So because I had a minor in food science, there was a lot of interest in organizations from the food industry. And back then, everyone who went to work for a big brand, right? Mars came on campus, or Kraft came on campus, or whatever it may be when you were in that area.
Yep.
And the opportunities that were coming, and like any time, the economy time of the year, I feel like food manufacturing was really at its high in the U.S. And food retail was really expanding in the U.S. and more groceries and things opening up. And I worked in grocery stores when I was at college, summers. So I had that industry experience. I had a minor degree. I had the business degree. And I was getting opportunities to go work in food manufacturing in labs with my food science background.
Okay.
And I was like, that is not neat.
That's not going to be the right direction.
And it's a path that I want to go down. And food manufacturing, if you know food manufacturing, it's not always in the most glamorous places either, right? It's glam. It's in smaller communities. It's where close to the resource is. Sure. And remember, somewhere I still have the Chicago Board of Trade in my head. Yeah, right. And you're under the skin some time in the city. So you're right. That's what you out and get those experiences. And so the Kroger company came to me and said, we'd like you to join us and go through our management training program. So they hired out of the universities and went for a 6-month training period. And then you became an assistant store manager in their organization. And at the time, Kroger was the largest food retailer in the country. Again, Walmart was coming next to them. And Target was just growing. They were the predominant leader, at least in many areas within the U.S.
Okay.
And they had a really well-done training program. And they were known for their training programs in the retail ball.
Okay.
So that's where I ended up.
So coming out of college, going to Kroger, where are you going? Are you moving to Ohio, or are they headquartered? Well, what did that look like getting into that program and being trained?
So you go through this 6-month training program where you basically work in stores in every department. Every single department in stores you are working in and learning from those department peers. You're also having some what I would call classroom type experiences. But most of it was hands-on learning in those environments.
And where the store was, a store area, Indiana?
The stores, at that time, I was back up in the Fort Wayne area. So the stores that I was in was my region, was up in the Fort Wayne area. Gotcha. And so I worked through all the stores. And so when I graduated from that program, I went to work as the assistant manager in Peru, Indiana.
Okay.
Small little town. What made this so phenomenal, and I didn't understand it then, it was just like Peru, Indiana. I'm like 45 minutes from where I grew up.
Yeah, this is where I was thinking.
This wasn't where I was thinking, but it ended up being such a great experience because there was a store manager and myself as there's the assistant. So, and you're covering a 24/7 environment. So while there were times that we worked together, often I was by myself and had those responsibilities.
Oh, really?
So I had to learn really fast.
Yeah.
It was like to manage a store. And it was one up there because it was a smaller town. It was actually one of their most profitable stores in one of their, and it was a busy store because it was the only store in town.
Yeah, where else are they going to go? Guess true, this probably Kroger and about it, right?
That was about it. And the store manager was one of Kroger's first, at least in the central marketing area, female store managers. And she was also, a younger female. It's not like she'd been in the organization for 20 years. Yeah, sure. It was about 10 years in her career.
Okay.
So I got to, work with female leader.
Yeah.
I got to be in an environment where I had a lot of responsibility early on. And there were some really long-term tenured, employees as Civico and associates there that really helped me because, I was there and I was young and they had been the produce manager for decades, or the office manager or the meat manager. So, I get to learn from them. Sure. And them helping grow as a leader and learn that craft as well.
What a great experience. I mean, when you think about it, right? Your immediate thought is Peru, oh my gosh, I'd rather be in a big city. But the opportunity, like I said, to work with a female leader who is not that far into their career, right? 24/7 operation. I didn't think about that being a store, but you're working with employees. Your 8-hour shift is just that 8-hour shift. Doesn't matter that it's late at night or early in the morning, but you're the leader. And you're now the one in charge running that because the young individual. You're meeting people in there. You're building relationships with the community. At the end of the day, you're working at Kroger.
We were the community partner,
right? I mean, you're the ones feeding the town. Everyone is coming to you, and you are meeting those people and helping them meet their needs and feed their families. Wow, that's a cool.
It was. I mean, we had to work. We were sponsors of the first circus. We sponsored a lot of local community and events, and that was the one thing Kroger was great at, not only training you, but they were a big community supporter in their town. So you were instilled with the values of customer service. Yeah. You were instilled with the values of community early on, and great responsibility. And so I was learning how to read a P&L statement, and very early on in my career and having responsibility for that.
Yeah, it's just that whole experience is interesting. I mean, some people don't get an opportunity to do that in a role. If they come in, they go through orientation, they say, okay, here's your desk, good luck. What a great opportunity to come in 6 months or whatever the program was. You learn each department, you meet everybody in those departments, you end up becoming their leader, but you understand what they're doing. You understand how everything works. What a great first job.
It was a great first job. When I look at that early opportunities, to where I've gotten it and spent my career,
yeah,
I attribute a lot of it to that. And the leaders that were there, the program that I went through, the opportunities that I was given, and just being open to it.
Sure. So how long are you at Kroger, and then kind of where's the transition come into your next role?
So you're going to get about a 7-year fee in everything I remember.
Okay, all right.
So from Kroger, I was in the stores. My division operations leader had done some work in HR before he had been in the stores, and then he was going into the central marketing area to lead that human resource for the Indiana, part of Ohio, Michigan. It's not one only territory. It was a central marketing area. And he said, I would love for you to come into HR and labor relations. And by then I was actually running stores, and I was for Fisher's people, the 116th and Allisonville store. I opened that store.
Okay, I got you.
And that was in itself, like for Kroger at the time, the new concept store, and just a great experience to staff 350 people in a time where Fisher's didn't have a lot of employees. So sure. Anyway, so he came to me and said, I'm going in the central marketing area. I'd love you to come in and work with me in our labor relations function.
Good.
And I remember going at the labor relations, HR, I have no clue what this is. And, Kroger was union, so I had union experience, that I looked at him and I said, I don't have any experience in labor relations. We don't really have any labor issues in my store.
Yeah.
So I'm not really versed in labor relations. And he's like, oh, that's why I want you to come in, because you don't have issues in your stores. You've learned how to work with employees. You've learned how to work with the union. And we need you to help teach others.
Sure.
And that is the experience we need. So, and he said, if you don't like it, you can go back in the stores.
Okay.
So I said, okay. So I moved from the Fisher store to the Indianapolis office, which is Stanley Cassington, and became part of the HR and labor relations team. And so that was a whole other experience. So I do store operations by then. I had been in multiple stores across Indiana at that point in time. Now I'm in this labor relations HR world. that I had no experience in. But again, great mentoring him in the kind of director of HR with her. But he was the director, then it was the manager, and they both had in the stores. And that was a great thing about Kroger is once you went through the leadership program, whether you came through the stores or through the universities, they grew their talent in sales and marketing in HR, other areas of the business from the stores. So they had a great succession plan. They had a great internal track through, because they valued you understood the operation now, and now we were going to specialize in different areas.
Sure.
So again, continue that great training. But I was doing, second chair contract negotiations. I was handling pension moratoriums, grievances, arbitrations across, at the time is that 120 stores across Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, some Ohio. And I was at the parent.
Yeah.
And was kind of thrown right into it.
At this point, you got experience in the stores. You know how everything's operate. You know how the people work, those types of things. But this is a brand new role. Good luck. Right, here you go.
And, great mentors, again, to help formulate it for me. But I can remember, coming to them and they were always really good at helping guide me, but never just making decisions for me. They were great about, what do you want to do? What do you think we should be doing? How would that play with this? And sometimes I would be like, just give me the answer. Just make the see on both of us. And you give me the answer, but what I realized they were doing is they were training me how to think and how to think broadly about operations. And didn't at that time, but that's really what they were doing and putting me in situations where, I worked in where we had strikes. I did contingency planning for labor disputes. I was negotiating labor contracts, through that time and tenure there. But I had great leaders that were teaching me along the way, but also, requiring me to build the confidence myself to figure it out.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you're in the moment, like you said, just give me the answer and making us accountable of us, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point, you're going to be the one making all those decisions, right? At some point, you're going to do something else, and you need to be able to, like you said, think. You need to be able to think through those things. And that's great that we always look back in 5-10 years later and go, oh, that was a really great thing they were doing. Look at how that helped me in my journey. That's just awesome.
Yeah. And that's been another theme in my journey. I've been really fortunate that there was somebody there who mentored me. So I think that's that first store manager.
Yeah.
Now, she had high expectations. And they all did. But they all mentored me and challenged me to, think differently, to, continue to learn, to grow, to not get comfortable in all of those experiences, but in an environment where I felt safe.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. And that you can tell that you and I have known each other a long time, but just the conversations we've had, you can tell that the way you operate today, a lot of that was probably positioned right back at Kroger. I mean, so that's very cool to hear that story of that kind of where you've gone. So you're in HR Kroger. You mentioned like a 7-year theme. So where do you go next? Do you stay within the Kroger organization, or do you move on to another role after you're kind of done with HR there?
Now, I knew at that point in time, I was in my, that would have been kind of my late 20s. So I was like, I want to I'm liking this HR thing, but I don't know if I want to do it in retail. don't know if I want to do labor relations. And I could have had a career doing labor relations and being one of the only female in labor relations at the time. But that's not really what I wanted. And I had the opportunity through networks and individuals that Nabisco was looking for an HR leader to work in their manufacturing in Indianapolis. And so it was like interesting. So it's food manufacturing, again, theme for me. It was working with one of the unions that I had worked with Kroger. So I already knew the union people. It was working with some of the same mentors that I had that were in the employment law firms. And so I went to work for Nabisco.
Okay.
And that was so there's also a theme of this mentorship and relationships and networks in my career. So 7 years, mentorship, relationships, that came all tied.
You mentioned networking. So while you're working in Kroger, are you meeting with other individuals from around the state? How did the network component come in to kind of lead you to Nabisco? How are you meeting with folks back then?
So back then, I worked a lot with some local attorneys who are still mentors to me today. And so they introduced me to people. Kroger did a great job of getting you out and having you meet people because remember, you were part of the community.
Yeah.
So whether again, I don't know if I thought about this during deeply at that. You were always in the community. You were, in those stores, you were an advocate in the community. You would harm the community. So I don't know if I called it networking then.
Right.
But it was just being active in community.
Sure.
At this point in time.
It's interesting though, but that same principle can be applied today, right? Just being in the community, being part of the community, willing to help, share, right? Do those types of things. All right. So you move into Nabisco and you're running HR, but Nabisco, what's that look like?
So I was a HR manager there. And so one of the things that they liked about me is this was a location they were looking to expand and bring in a better footprint to around labor relations. It was kind of contentious there. There was a more early career first assignment plant manager there. And it was also, I didn't know it, one of 3 of their locations that was up for sale.
Oh, okay.
So my time with Nabisco was actually short. It was probably about a year before they sold the 3 locations within the portfolio of this refrigerated group to Conagra Foods. So that was my first experience in acquisition and being part of an acquisition from one large company to a smaller, or from one large company to another large company. And I learned a lot just in that experience. I learned so that experience with them coming in and acquiring us and what that's like to go through that. And here you have those fears and concerns of what does that mean for me? I just started in this. Yeah, I went there a year.
Yep, I was doing great. Yeah.
But then to see them want to invest in the location. So you go from you're not a strategic part of the business in the whole Nabisco, where you think they had more cookies at Crackers, that things like that. Then we were more refrigerated foods. We were now a strategic buy for Conagra.
Yeah, sure.
So we became hang on the side, trying to figure out what to do with them. Didn't really fit in the portfolio.
Yeah.
To you're a strategic play now.
Yeah, you're billable.
We're going to invest in this location. We're going to add a divisional headquarters here. We're going to extend the operations. We're going to consolidate one of the older facilities and bring it here. We're going to expand this other facility. So I got opened up then.
Yep.
A bit to not only being able to use my labor and employment background, helping with the change happening for our workforce.
Yep.
But I got exposed to M&A and generation work and just growth, divestiture operations from that standpoint. Then again, early in my career, again, I'm in my late 20s at this sure time, and I'm getting these opportunities and responsibilities, and found myself when Conagra had purchased the organization, the plant leader, and all of us came with it, and that plant manager became such a great mentor for me in manufacturing operations, and just still a dear friend today. And the VP of HR over our division for Conagra, he again took me under his wing and taught me that next level of leadership. And I think I fell in love with him that day. And I can say, dearly do love this man. He's a mentor and a friend. But I remember reaching out to him and I said, we've got this issue with a security guard. And I want to talk to you about it because, he only has one arm. And is that okay? Would it work that? And he said, Jill, can I ask you questions? And I said, yeah. And again, I really don't know him very well. Yeah, sure. And he says, do you need them armed or unarmed? And, I'm in this serious mode. Try to figure this thing out. And he says that to me. And I was like, I just started laughing. Of course. And I was like, I know this is just somebody I'm really going to enjoy working for. Yeah. One, he's super smart and he's got a great personality, and he's in labor and employment and HR, and he's going to make it fun. Yeah. And I'd had that. Kroger was fun. Kroger was a fun experience. Nabisco was a fun, even though it was very, for a challenging labor environment, we have fun. Well, I knew that experience going forward was going to be educational and fun. Yeah. And you know what? When I did so, this HR career happened, and it's not something I saw myself in. Yep. It's not something maybe I saw as fun or sexy. It was just something I ended up, being brought into. But it ended up, for me personally, being fun and sexy. And
yeah, right. Of course, yeah. So, I mean, because it all started at Kroger, somebody noticed it and said, hey, I want you to come in and join here, right? So you go through a couple of roles there. You're at Conagra. You're running the HR. What happens next? Because at some point, you're out on your own, building your own business. Does that come next after this, or where do you go from Conagra?
No, so Conagra gave me some trade opportunities to, if I was in the Conagra years when they were, again, Kraft Conagra were the largest food companies in the U.S. So, really North America. And I was in the years they were doing a lot of internal merging. Yep. They were doing a lot of divesting. They were doing a firing and really shifting and moving that portfolio around. Okay. And I was fortunate enough to go from Indianapolis and from that regional manager to a director, and move to Chicago and be a director within the refrigerated foods group, and have about 12 manufacturing.
Wait, you tell me to Chicago.
You had to go to the big city, sorry. Just like I said. Okay. So, and we're going to get to the board of trade here soon. So from there, when we're shifting and moving and divesting and things, and I'm getting to be a piece of all that, we then decided to move the Chicago office that we had to Omaha. Okay. And my leader and mentor had said, Taff was in Omaha. I'm a Chicago guy. I'm not going. And I think you should consider Jill. But then I'm, again, all of about 30-something. Young child, and being offered the opportunity to be divisional vice president for $1.6 billion. Wow. Food service division. Yep. At that rival age, we'll have, at that point, about 30 manufactured plants and helping with that move, that relocation, that built that. Yeah, sure. From there, we were shifting and moving and divesting things, and so then I went with another leader, because we had over 100 manufacturing plants. He and I went into a group to help them consolidate and bring supply chain and manufacturing all under one umbrella. and led those efforts and endeavors with our ops leaders, and then to reallocate and restructure the entire HR footprint for those facilities. And divesting, $1 billion meat business, that I got to be a part of those dialogues and some of the largest labor negotiation strategies and plays in the food industry at that time. So I'm getting into so great mentorship, great experiences working with top leaders in this industry. Think about that. Conagra was the largest. So our head of HR, I was mentored by him. I was mentored by our head of labor relations. I was mentored by these amazing operation leaders to learn supply chain, continuous improvement, lean.
Yeah,
But just so many experiences that, I've taken all of those with me, and have always felt just very honored to have had those experiences and those relationships.
I have to say, the Wave is a lot of podcasts that we've done over the years. I think it's 200 and some odd episodes on another show that I do. Your experience from college to this point in your career, from a mentorship perspective, opportunity, I don't know that I've heard anything like that. How it shaped who you are and how you're running your business today, that we've talked about some things. It's really cool to see how that backstory has evolved and shaped a lot of your thoughts of the way you're leading and doing things today.
It is. And, and then again, that same leader who knew me in Kroger, who is a mentor, who, I worked with a little bit at Nabisco. He worked with me, this team at Conagra. I was at Conagra and Omaha. By then, it was at our second. And he had reached out and said, hey, have you ever thought about coming back to Indiana? And at the time, I was like, I'm having fun. What's up? And he said, there's a company called Hillrom in Batesville, Indiana, and they're looking for, a North America commercial HR person. And I remember when it sounds good, I don't. Batesville, Indiana, and it's smaller. Sure, what I was doing in scale, it was still large. It was smaller than what I was doing. And so about 60 days later, he called me back and said they've changed the position. They'd added some scope to it. I'm thinking you should at least talk to them, Jill, because you've got great manufacturing supply chain experience. You had some of that commercial experience, but it's in North America. This is international. This is medical device.
Okay.
This is commercial.
Yep.
And this is, I'm not telling you what you should do, but this is a nice pathway for you in your career.
Yeah, this is okay.
And I remember saying, it's okay. Interesting. And, food industry is stable. Medical device seems pretty stable. They're a stable company. They've been around for a long time. And so I agreed to have a phone call with them and ended up spending 7 years with the Hillrom company and moving. And I had 2 young children at the time. So going back home seemed a little more attractive to right? Yeah, to be closer to family as parents are getting, older too, and having them close to their cousins and things like that. So moving the family to Batesville, Indiana, where I spent 7 years and really got to learn international, got to learn commercial, got to learn another industry.
Yeah.
But pulled a lot of the things, if you think of medical device and you're in those hospital environments, and we had everything from the patient rooms into surgical spaces. A lot of the same things that you're learning in the food industry, which is highly regulated, are highly regulated in the medical device industry.
Sure.
So that's how I made that transition.
Okay. So now when you think about it, though, you've really had a well-rounded career from beginning now to being down in Batesville, even so much where you've had international experience, right? So now by this point, I would call you a wealth of knowledge, right? From the mentors that you've had, all the opportunities that you've had. So you do 7 years down in Batesville, right? two little kids. They're growing up, all those types of things. At some point, you end up back here. What happens after Batesville?
So they were starting to, as Hillrom continued to grow and acquire, a lot of our leaders were coming from Chicago.
Okay.
And then the decision was to move the Chicago, really the HQ, and they were looking for global talent to Chicago. So I helped a little bit with framing that up and supporting some of that effort. And I was familiar with Chicago too, so it was a very big. And I started to think, what if I stay in Batesville? There's not going to be much of an infrastructure here anymore. Yeah, it's really a to Chicago. I've already been to Chicago, done that. I've got a young family. I'm living a 24/7 lifestyle in the global course world.
Yep.
And so I didn't know it at the time, but I had gone out I was invited to an event with a dear friend of mine, and we had been talking about, someday I'm quite, need to think about what I'm doing, because I don't know if I want to move back to Chicago. This is going to look different. I didn't know if it, she invited me to this event with a CEO of a locally held fintech company. Okay. And, I talked to him, and I remember him sharing what he met his wife and him, and we're at this event. I remember him talking to him, great guy, got a lot of stuff going on, didn't think anything of it. Yep. And at that point in time, a lot of the leaders that I had worked with at Conagra, some of them were working at Sara Lee, and were like, would you consider coming to Sara Lee? We're doing some, dividing some of that organization out. Yeah. We're looking for HR leadership in that. Would you be interested? And it was intriguing. Food industry again, people I worked with, sure, back in Chicago. And I was like, a young family, being at home. And then I got the call from the CEO that said, have you ever thought about leaving big global America and coming up with a small technology company, turn on and burn? And it was the same thing I said with Hillrom at the time. No, I hadn't.
Yeah, right. Of course, yeah.
And I was like, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
But then I started to think about interesting from a career path for me. So at Hillrom, I had responsibility for our healthcare IT group. Sure. And they were so different than the rest of our medical device group. They were fast-paced. They were, we were always like, how we slow these folks down. But it was like they were the real innovators. They were the real creators. They were running culturally very, very different.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. And it was in Research Triangle Park in the tech world.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, there's something kind of fun about this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And in this business, it's privately held. I'm not going to be traveling as much. And then I have a young family. I can bring my family back to Indianapolis, which we like to call home.
Yeah.
And this sounds like it could be kind of fun, sure, for me. And I've never been in a privately held organization.
Usually different.
And I know a little bit about tech, but not a lot. So I did it.
Wow. Okay. So now you're in Muncie. Mm-hmm. Move the family back to what you're going to call home here in Indianapolis. You're at the small fintech. Mm-hmm. How long are you there? 7 years?
7.5 years. Yeah.
All right. I see the theme of 7. Now you're there 7 years. Is from Muncie, is that when you decide to go and be an entrepreneur and start your business? Or is there another stop in between?
No, it was. I loved helping a small, at the time they were about 50 million. Again, we were involved in a turnaround, and after about the first year and a half, this is where the story gets kind of weird. The CEO that was there was a very individual and his team. They left to go and work for the private equity organization that they had worked for before. They'd come there. The head of HR of that large private equity was my mentor. I didn't even know until I called them and I said, did executives just go work? I'm like, why cares it? And he's like, I wonder when I get the call. And so one of the founders who was in the business came back in and took the chair, and I got to work next to a founder.
Okay.
So again, new experience for you.
First time, right?
First time working for a founder.
Yep.
I'd worked for the first generation after a founder in that experience, but now founder was in charge. So I got to learn the mentality of a founder.
Okay.
And I got to, again, he's a dear friend and a mentor. And I got to learn how they think.
Yep.
And I got to watch how he cared about community, cared about his people, cared about the cultures that we were building, worked to scale that business bootstrapped to new investors, to, where we, really more than 3x that company, and ended up selling it to the third set of private investors that since I had been there. But it was a complete turnaround.
Yes.
And I watched him and I learned from him, and he let me expand from not just HR into supporting IT business services, facilities, procurement.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to do things outside of just HR too.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think he was the one that solidified. He doesn't know this. So Ron, if you ever listen to this, and Will, I think they solidified for me that this entrepreneur thing was really cool.
Okay.
And that's where the entrepreneur. So when we sold the business, I was ready to exit. I had already started to incubate one of the businesses that I have. And I knew that was the path I wanted to go.
Okay. So there was never really part of your plan up until that point.
Not really.
Right. So had you not said yes to going and taking something, even though your friends were calling asking if you were sick, had you not said yes and done 7 years up there, had all that other experience, you may not have been where you are today. Okay. So you get the bug. You're going to start a company, right? And you just exited your organization out of Muncie. Tell us, what'd you start? What were you going to solve? What business are you in today? And why did you go down that path?
Sure. So let's talk about the HR. I knew one day I was a little burnt out of HR. Remember, I started my career really early. And I would say I peaked early, right? I got to peak early.
Yeah.
And I was burnt out for a while. So I took some time off. I took about 3 months off travel, knew I wanted to do this entrepreneurship thing, but I needed some decompression time. Then I knew I wanted to go in and have my own business, and I wanted to do consulting. And there were parts of things, right? You pull back into your strengths and what you enjoy and what gets your energy. What were those things? And then how did it help solve problems out in the world? And what I realized is when I worked in the large companies, you had the large consulting firms that you always pulled in. And I always felt I learned from those, but they kind of came in, gave me a strategy, told you what to do, and then they left.
Yeah.
And then you were sitting there as the organization going,
Yeah.
what do I do now?
Who's going to implement?
Who's going to implement it? How's it going to get done? And then when I went to work at a small scaling business and I'd look around like, who does this? Where's they were like, oh, that's us. And you're like, oh, so now I got to get really scrappy. Yeah, right. Sure. How do you, grow and scale that your model is going to add a head count?
Yes.
And where are these fractional providers that can help? And they really were few and far between that could it help. And you certainly couldn't afford a big consulting firm.
Yeah.
So I sold the scab in the market. And then I had heard through a friend of mine who was a CFO. She's like, well, I know in the finance world, there's certainly these fractional CFOs. And I know a guy who's doing it. Do you want me to introduce you? Okay. So I met him. And again, this is now 8 years ago.
Okay.
And fractional wasn't even a term. Yeah, right. And he's telling me what he's doing. I was like, well, why can't that be done in HR? This is brilliant. Like, if this is what we need, like, there's people who are doing some recruiting and doing some fill in the gap stuff, but what's really doing this fractional and consulting in this mid-market, small market scale space. And then it was like, well, you only use marketing partners when I think about it. Like, marketing firms kind of do this.
Yeah.
So we really think about what a marketing firm does for an organization. Absolutely. So I started to just connect the dots and say, okay, the things you really love about HR is helping turn around, scale, grow, lead change, transform, mentor, evolve.
Yeah.
And you and fractional and projects is a gap.
Okay.
In these spaces. And so that's how Evolve HR was born. And I started I filed for the business in late 19, but I really didn't start until early 2020. And of course, that's COVID.
Okay, wait. So I guess I forgot that. Yeah, I remember you telling me this now. So you get started in 2020. What was that like? I mean, obviously the world was completely different back then 6 years ago. How did that first year go?
It was scary, right? Who could have projected it? So there was part of me that was like, what on earth did I do? I left a good gig, and I left a paycheck. I left stability. I left these things. I left identity. If you think about it, my whole career, I had left that identity. I didn't even know at times how to describe myself.
That's actually a really good thing that not a lot of folks think about, because a lot of people put their identity into what they do. 2026, and you're still here. So the story's good.
Story is great.
Right? So say things take off and you start doing well. What type of clients are you working on? Like, what do they look like? Who are you out trying to help support?
Yeah. So we really help those clients that are probably, most of them, somewhere around that 35 employees to about 250 employees and in between. The reason that is, anything below that might have a PEO that they're working with and supporting. And then when they get to that number, they're starting to think, do I stay or do I start building out? So I think it becomes a pivotal moment for them in people, infrastructure, talent, story. So that's kind of where we generally fall in with. Now are there onesie twosies, of course, right? And then, we work with them. Okay, where are you going? Because we want to, and we assess where you're at, where you're going, and then help you figure out how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And that may mean a variety of things for our clients. So we're not a cookie cutter. You could come in and pick, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry from us. So this is what we offer you. Our model is really, we're going to come in and assess, work with you around what are you trying to accomplish, and then we're going to help you build that.
Yeah.
And that may include us for a period of time, and that may include us just helping you build that through other resources, through a full-time hire. But we're gonna walk that journey with you to get you there. In whatever amount you need. And that's kind of where we come in. We work with a lot of, I think because I had that scale and growth experience, we work with most of them are scaling and growing. Because I had that private equity experience and that founder experience. We tend to work with a lot of founders and a lot of private equity organizations. So we have a lot of private equity clients that come in, whether it's a project or we support them from a fractional in their business, because that's part of their business strategy to a certain degree. So those are what I would say the majority. And we cross different industries. So we have tech clients, we have industrial manufacturing clients, so we had home service clients. So we've really crossed the gamut of, we had healthcare clients. So we cross the gamut of a lot of different industries.
Yeah, the model, and one of the things that's interesting that a lot of folks, you mentioned cookie cut. Here's the strawberry chocolate vanilla type thing. What's interesting about your model is because of your experience, right? You mentioned consultative. Sometimes it doesn't include you for a long period of time. Sometimes it's helping bring somebody in and just creating that value. If any of your prospects ask what kind of background do you have that could help us understand this, just tell them to watch this podcast. I mean, if you go back all the way from Kroger to where you started your business, you've seen every type of business. You've been through all of those HR challenges. You've hired 350 people, I think it was, at 116th Street for Kroger. That's amazing, right? So when you sit down and talk to a business owner, you are a business owner and you can understand what you could do to help them. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Great job.
And again, it goes back to, for people that are thinking about starting a business, pulling your strengths.
Yep.
And how do your strengths help solve a problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
And because if you don't really enjoy what you do and have confidence in what you do, and confidence, not arrogance. Yeah. There's difference. We just love, there is nothing more gratifying to me than when a client comes to me and said, we've struggled with HR, we've lost, X amount of HR people, we haven't got traction, or I know I haven't invested in it, I need help. And we help them out of that fog. Because one, it helps the business. Two, it helps the employees. And it helps, hopefully if we do it right and the next HR person come in, not get burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been in burnout. We've all hit burnout. There's a lot of HR that are burnout. There's a lot of disconnect, I think, the value of HR. And if we can help organizations solve that for their people, for them, for their HR people, to me, that's why I get up every day and yes. And that we get the repeat calls and then we get the referrals to help support the clients and this endeavor. That's really, and it goes back to that customer service values that I entered this, in many years ago, is I really believe in, we serve our clients. And my team of consultants that we have to have that DNA. They have to know how to scale. They have to know how to serve at heart. They have to also be consultative. So we just don't, if we think there's a better way to do something, we're gonna give you those options and alternatives. Now, in the end, it's your decision to make. We always respect that, but we're gonna work with you to say, if we really want to solve this problem, here's what we're seeing as the root cause of the issues. Now, how do we really fix those things? So you have to deal with it anymore. You could keep hitting the turnover. And you get to do the fun things of scaling your business, better performance, happier people, because I say this, I'm a coach, I've done training. Training and coaching is wonderful and it's a component of it. But if we don't fix the processes and the infrastructure, you can't train your way out of it. So, right? You really can't. Yeah. So doing some of the hard work and the heavy lifting, is really critical to long-term sustainable, productive, success when it comes to culture and engagement and people.
Yep. Love it.
So that's the journey.
So part of what we do, obviously, at Braden, we're a technology here. And one of the things I like to ask is, how's technology changing in your business? How are you leveraging it? Where you maybe see things going in the future? So nothing major, but how are you guys maybe evolving with tech to help support your clients? What's new?
Yeah. Well, of course, the AI story is everywhere, right? And it's really impacted the HR function. It impacts consulting, right? And
yep,
how we work with clients and how we approach and where AI comes in and where we come in. So, we have to evolve with that and understand the tools that are out there and how they can be utilized, but also understand, this is where I lean into change management. You can have all the tools and all these things, but if you don't change your processes and your infrastructure around them,
yep,
you'll struggle.
Yep.
So, looking at the change management component that needs to come in, we're bringing those. And, I look at it from a culture lens. There are a lot great people that you and I know out there that are working on it truly in the AI lens out there. But I think that's the next thing. These tools are coming up. And I think there's going to be a balance shift, just like anything else. We always hear, when COVID hit and everyone said, we're going remote and we're never going back.
Yep.
And I said, we're going back.
Yep.
Human nature is we're humans. There's a connectivity piece from some businesses and some positions will be successful with remote, but not all. It's going to be the same thing with AI. We're going to go full into AI because we see the value, we see the efficiencies, we see the potential, savings and all the things that are come with it. And then we're going to shift back because that people component is still going to exist. And for us in HR, for us in leadership roles, for us to be value add and job secure in the future, we've realized it's not going anywhere. But how do we help enable it to be better?
Yep.
And how do we also make sure there's controls around it so we don't lose the human side of what we do, with these awesome tools and technology that's coming at us?
Yeah, I think that's one of the best answers I've heard, because yes, it can help accelerate. Yes, it can be a tool, much like things we have today, but the human component is still always going to exist. Keeping people to feel part of a team, building a culture, keeping people together, helping organizations grow that culture, there's always going to be a human component. Can we help them? Sure. Is it going to take over? I don't think so, right? So we talked a lot about mentorship, culture, those types of things. So maybe a little bit about community, right? So obviously Indianapolis is home for you and your family. Talk to me a little bit about community involvement. I know there's even a story of some art stuff that's in there we haven't touched yet.
Yeah. Community involvement is a big part of my life today, because there were times in my journey and when I'm coaching leaders and women, there's times we maybe can't lean into it as much as we can, maybe early in career or later in career. So there's a season just right there. And so my community engagement today looks very different than my community engagement when I was global corporate traveling all the time.
Yep.
And recognize so there are seasons for it. For me, it's kind of falls in a couple different areas today. One, I'm a big advocate for education. So I spend a lot of time with, especially at the university level, some at the high school level, but mainly at the university level, mentoring, speaking at classes, speaking at conferences in those environments. And I sit on a board at Purdue. I sit on a board at Volk State. So I'm really passionate about working with students. Yeah, sure. And because I had those opportunities to do that. I mean, it was just, I feel that, maybe I didn't notice it as much when my parents were mentoring me, but I certainly had mentors in my career. And I look back, my parents were mentoring me. But I also had these other mentors that came into my world. So mentoring, education is a really big component for me. Another piece is food insecurity. So I've sat on different boards of food banks over the years, and so I'm very passionate about food insecurity and participating and supporting those organizations. And then the third is art. So I do own a whole other art business, an art gallery. We work with some of the art non-for-profits, and one in particular I'm really passionate about. If you come into our space, is Art Mix. It's artists with disabilities.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like you said, that is another old show. And when you talk about community, it's great to hear, you talking to the university level, those students that are going to be going on their career, right? Because if you think about your freshman year, then the transition to your sophomore year, you're out speaking to people that are going to make some kind of a change. It's going to make a ripple in their career.
Absolutely.
Right. And to give your knowledge back to those folks at this point, that's awesome. And so, I mean, as I think through a lot of the conversations I've had over the years, this is terrific. I mean, just a great story of transition from location to location, like you said, the rule of 7, if you will, and the mentors along the way, and then how it built to what you're doing today to be an entrepreneur and the success that you're seeing. And then, of course, what's going on at Jar Bowl and all those other things. Super cool story. So maybe just before we end, just some fun stuff. So if you're doing things around the city to have some fun, what's that look like? What are you doing? It's a date night looks like.
So a date night. So tonight's date night it's Devour. So I'm a foodie by nature, right? You've heard the story now. So I love exploring new restaurants and new cuisine and anything in the foodie journey. Yeah, for sure. I love sports, watching sports. So tonight is hockey night. Okay. So the Indianapolis Fuel are putting the Fort Worth Comets. So that's a tie for me. Yeah. Was it my hometown? As a Hayes fan growing up, my local Fuel team. So we do that. Love to mix and host people, and craft cocktails. So love that craft cocktail experience.
Okay.
And I love music, gardening, concerts, and things like that. But those are some. And just spending time. My daughters are now late college, mid college. So anytime I still get to be a cool mom,
Yeah.
and they let me in their world,
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. So, and where are they at? Are they here in Indianapolis or where are they latest?
So I've got one at Fall State.
Okay.
And living her best life, enjoying that as a sophomore. And, love watching her in those early career jobs too, and where her journey goes, we'll see. And then my oldest just graduated from Purdue, and she already runs her own and has for many years, successful little growing art business and their own entrepreneur since high school. That's awesome. And doing that on the side. And then also is in that search right now, and will likely end up where she is really found her passion and joys in laboratory environments.
Okay.
Yeah. So just watching her grow and mature, and the relationships that they have and where those ultimately take them, it's kind of a fun journey as a mom.
Yeah, it's awesome. So proud mom, business owner, art lover. Thank you for sharing your story. It's awesome to get to know you and to learn more about your background. It's just great to know you and Tanya in general. Thank you for sharing your story.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm usually so low key because I look at my journey and it's just my life.
Yeah.
I don't really think of it as something that's cool or intriguing or interesting, but it is to me.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, people will listen and they're going to start to think about maybe where they are today. There might be people mentoring them that they're missing, and they could maybe learn some of those things. Because I think we always think about it. You get a couple years down the road and you look back and you go, oh, I guess I didn't realize I might have done something a little quicker, or I might have done something a little bit different. And anytime you get an entrepreneur in here, especially somebody who went through a couple of roles and then had that opportunity where they just something sparked, right? I think there's a lot of folks out there where there's maybe a spark, but they're just not quite sure if they should go for it. Well, if you could go for it at the end of 2019 and live through 2020, I think anybody should go for it. So
If you know passion, passion is a big piece of it. And to get bet on yourself.
you bet.
And bring a tribe around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.